there has been a lot of talk about a spring offensive. And so Ukraine is going to launch at some point in the coming days, weeks, months, some kind of new or at least invigorated assault, right? You hear all kinds of talk in the Western mainstream media about this. So let's talk about this, okay? Let's talk about this spring offensive. And first, I think it's important. Let's go over the context here. Let's go over the story. So this article is from RT. So this spring offensive, right? This comes in the wake of the battle in Bakhmut, right? The battle in Bakhmut is raging. Russia surrounding Bakhmut, and it also comes in the wake of this MQ-9 Reaper drone that was downed in the Black Sea. Comes amid many escalations, but Bakhmut being the biggest battle on that front line that is taking a countless number of lives from Ukraine and is likely going to fall at some point in the near future. And so with that said, right, NATO and the US have been talking about how they're running out of time. Ukraine is out of time. It's a big problem right now. It's a big problem for Ukraine. It's in a predicament. A big predicament. And that predicament is that it's running out of ammunition, it's running out of artillery, it's running out of weaponry, and NATO just doesn't have enough to give. But now they are looking to double down. And so Ukraine is planning a major attack on new Russian territories. The German newspaper has cited an unnamed NATO official as claiming that Kiev is preparing to strike Zaporozhye and Lugansk. So the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is approaching a decisive period, with Kiev aiming to retake Moscow's new territories this spring, Germany's Bild newspaper has reported. The tabloid cited an anonymous NATO source who claimed the bloc is providing Ukraine with everything it needs to sever the so-called land bridge to Crimea. In a report on Tuesday, Bild quoted a leading NATO official as stating that the alliance's analysts expect the conflict to reach climax in the spring and the summer. The official expressed confidence that heavy weaponry being delivered to Ukraine will be brought to bear in several counteroffensives as early as May. The coming 6 months will be a key period in the war, not only for Ukraine, but also for the Allies, the unnamed source predicted. While refusing to go into detail regarding planned operations, the official asserted that Ukrainian forces will focus their efforts on regions in Zaporozhye and Lugansk. The main objective of the offensives will be to sever the land bridge to Crimea, the NATO source added. The official claimed that Ukraine is likely to mount counteroffensives in other regions as well, which will either be genuine or merely serve as distractions to preoccupy the Russian military. According to the Bild report, NATO is not ruling out a scenario in which Ukraine would attempt to retake Crimea, which joined in 2014 following a referendum. Kiev has the right to recapture all Ukrainian territory. So this is dangerous. I mean, the dangerous thing is not so much the escalation, because let's be frank. No matter what NATO throws at Ukraine, it's just prolonging the conflict. It's not changing the outcome. Russia is prepared. Russia is fighting a war of attrition. Russia still has more than 70, 80% of its partial mobilization not yet on the front lines. It's in the rear. Russia is prepared. Russia has reorganized its economy and its military to take part in this war of attrition. So it's not going to change the outcome. Russia is not going to be beaten back. Surely there could be gains for Ukraine, but it's not going to kick Russia out of all of the territory. It's just not. That's not going to happen. Anyone who thinks that way is dreaming. So to engage in this kind of rhetoric, to engage in this kind of planning, just shows how deep the collective West is in its commitment to fighting Russia. That's really what it is, to waging a war on Russia. That's what this is showing, a commitment to waging war on Russia. So in an effort to ensure new offensives are successful, Kiev's backers are reportedly providing it with intelligence data, as well as training, logistical support, and weapons. Speaking to a Polish newspaper, Rzeczpospolita, on Monday, Czech President Petr Pavel said the window of opportunity for Ukraine will be open only until the end of this year. The former general, who served as the chair of NATO Military Committee until 2018, argued with elections approaching in the U.S. in 2024, Washington is likely to reduce defense aid to Ukraine. Pavel said he expected European nations to follow suit. Ukraine will only have one attempt to launch a major counteroffensive, said the Czech president, adding that should this effort fail, it will be extremely difficult to obtain funds for the next one. Now, I'm going to push back on that a bit. Because I don't think that's the primary issue here. I don't think the primary issue is that the political will won't be there. I mean, of course, if you have Donald Trump win in the United States, you have more political changes across Europe, surely it might get a little more dicey. But the will to do this, the neocons, we can't underestimate the will of neocons attached to the military-industrial complex. It's a mistake. They will pursue their agenda at all costs, and they will do so with the aim of satisfying their employers, their masters, their political careers. That cannot be understated. But I think it's important to note that this is really about a supply issue. It is about how NATO stockpiles, and you're about to see why, how NATO stockpiles are about to be exposed for where they really are. And here, the BBC reports that the EU gives Ukraine $2 billion of ammunition after shell plea. And that recently happened. This happened a couple days ago. So, as the spring offensive has been talked about, there have been preparations made, but these preparations are going to expose NATO's incredible weakness at this moment. That actually it is about to show the world that, and they keep these things secret, but this new agreement here from the EU is going to show how NATO stockpiles are dwindling and perhaps could be zero after this. So that's the primary issue here, is that once those are gone, it's going to take years to gain them back. And Ukraine doesn't have years. And so I think that's the primary issue. Politically, we can't predict. We don't know. But we do know when these weapons are used and wasted, they're gone. So more than a dozen European Union member states have agreed to supply Ukraine with at least 1 million artillery shells over the next year. The plan is worth 2 billion euros, was agreed in Brussels on Monday. Ukraine has told the EU it needed 350,000 shells a month to hold back advancing Russian troops to launch a counteroffensive this year. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba hailed the game-changing decision from the EU. It's exactly what we needed, he said on Twitter. Urgent delivery and sustainable joint procurement. The deal comes as Russia grows concern at the Ukrainian counteroffensive near Bakhmut or in southern Ukraine, according to a report from the think tank Institute for the Study of War. Meanwhile, Russia's New Year offensive may be nearing culmination, it added. Defense and foreign ministers from 17 EU countries and Norway signed the ammunition agreement. The first part of the plan commits 1 billion euros of shared funding for EU states to draw upon their existing stockpiles, with those of sending this to Ukraine by the end of May. The second part of the deal would see a further 1 billion used to jointly order 155mm shells for Ukraine, the most sought-after artillery rounds. The EU is hoping that this joint order will incentivize European defense firms to increase their output with the hope that contracts can be signed by the start of September. So that's how deep the problem is. This has to incentivize these firms. Well, these for-profit firms are only going to be incentivized as much as their bottom line. And we've seen how the just-in-time production model and various other issues has led to stockpile issues. And so to sign the contracts by the start of September doesn't sound like the spring, but let's keep going. The deal means each country will have to share details of their ammunition stockpiles, something normally kept secret. So that's the deal here. They're going to have to share that how much they have in ammunition. And I got to say, all indications are it's not a lot. And whatever they have left, and they give it away, and Ukraine wastes it in a slaughterhouse and a cauldron that, on that front line, that's it. The deal means current ammunition production in Europe is said to be lagging behind the levels Ukraine insists it needs to fight Russia. And that's just fact. They don't have it. There are also questions about how much EU countries can share from their own stockpiles without leaving themselves vulnerable. Increasing industrial capacity is essential, EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton said during a visit to French arms industry company Nexter on Monday. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, there's the jungle man again, recently warned that the bloc had to supply artillery shells Ukraine needed or face the prospect of Ukraine losing the war. He said Russian forces were firing 50,000 rounds of artillery each day and that Ukraine must be lifted to the same level. Hungary has rejected, sending ammunition, but doesn't stop anyone else from doing so. and that Norway is going to start to delivered the Leopard 2 tanks from Germany to Ukraine to use during this counteroffensive. Who knows if they'll be able to use them? And then, of course, we have more aid from the United States, 350 million. But again, the elephant in the room here is that none of this actually gets Ukraine to where it was during the beginning of the special military operation, February of 2022. And we're going to see where these stockpiles are. We really are. We're going to get to see where these stockpiles are because it feels like the spring offensive is doomed from the beginning. Now, I take from people like Scott Ritter who understand military very well, and that there very well could be gains on the battlefield because, yes, Ukraine will throw everything they have and been given at this conflict. All right, they will throw everything at Russia, and Russia has shown itself. Brian Berletic as well has said, shown itself that it will retreat, and that's been the case since the beginning of this conflict. That yeah, they'll retreat perhaps in certain areas, but usually what happens, as you've seen with Kherson and Kharkov, Russia retreats, but then it comes right back. And they have what it takes to come right back. And so in this war of attrition, where Russia's playing the long game, they don't want to get into an escalation that could put people, civilians, and their military in harm's way more than is necessary. Their main goal is to defend Donbass. So they're not going to make rash moves, and they're going to do whatever it takes to reduce casualties. And so, sure, there might be gains, but at the same time, the spring offensive will be doomed regardless because it's not going to change the outcome. And that is what's important about all war, whether you're talking about proxy wars or confrontations like this, is that what's most important is the outcome, what happens at the end, not what happens in one battle or the next. And Russia's fighting to win, and Russia's winning. So, along with this, though, you also have these dangerous escalations. So, in the last 24 hours, you've had a lot of talks about depleted uranium being supplied to Ukraine from the United Kingdom. Russia has condemned this, of course, but it just goes to show how the collective West has no conscience here. It is only working toward its own ends. And so the UK is denying that this is a nuclear escalation because that's what Russia is saying. And Russia was being hyperbolic here. But at the same time, they don't want to see, no one wants to see, who wants to see any kind of conflict with depleted uranium? We don't know exactly whether depleted uranium caused massive amounts of toxicity and destruction in Iraq to the point where people are still getting sick from it, right? Depleted uranium has a lot of possible consequences. It's not confirmed, but it's most likely that Iraqis during the U.S. invasion of Iraq were decimated and are still feeling the lingering effects of the use of depleted uranium munitions. So the UK is saying, oh, well, we'll supply that to Ukraine to be used on the battlefield. And Russia condemned it and said this is a potential nuclear escalation. And the UK says absolutely not. It's not. So, British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said on Wednesday there's no nuclear escalation in the Ukraine war after Russian President Vladimir Putin criticized British supply of depleted uranium tank munitions to Ukraine forces. Britain had on Monday confirmed it was supplying Ukraine with ammunition, which contained depleted uranium. The heavy metal is used in weapons because it can penetrate tanks and armor more easily due to its density, among other properties. But Putin on Tuesday condemned British plans to send such ammunition to Ukraine, saying Moscow will be forced to respond accordingly as such weapons had a nuclear component. Cleverly said Russia was the only country talking about mounting nuclear risks, and the ammunition was conventional. There is no nuclear escalation. The only country in the world that is talking about nuclear issues is Russia. There's no threat to Russia. This is purely helping Ukraine defend itself. So this is how these people talk. It's worth making sure everyone understands this because the word uranium is in the title of depleted uranium munitions. They are not nuclear munitions. They are conventional munitions. And so what's funny is that they're not wrong. However, the point is not whether it's exactly nuclear weapons, right? Because even the AUKUS agreement is not nuclear weapons, right? Nuclear submarines aren't necessarily nuclear weapons. But even by using the materials for the purpose of killing Russians, because that's what they're not saying. The UK is trying to make it sound like they're defending Ukraine. Ukraine is making their own decisions, and they're just defending Ukraine's sovereignty. Well, actually, by giving depleted uranium rounds, you are now putting Russian people in the Donbass, but also Russian military at risk of biological warfare, because that is really what depleted uranium is. It's chemical warfare. It is using materials that have the risk of destroying people's lives beyond conventional weaponry and using them again in a conflict, right? And being a party to that conflict. So that's what they're not saying, because they never say we're in this to back Ukraine to kill Russians. But that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what's happening. They're killing Russians. They're killing Russians in Donbass who are civilians, and they're killing Russian military personnel in the Wagner group. So this is where the spring offensive is at, right? This is where this so-called spring offensive is at. It's at this point of throwing everything, depleted uranium, right? Throw everything at the wall, throw all the pasta at the wall and see which sticks. But the problem is that this is just going to cause more death and destruction. It's not actually going to change the outcome. Nothing can change the outcome beyond sitting down at a table and starting to talk about peace. That's it. The spring offensive will be doomed because it will just prolong the fighting. More Ukrainians will die. The weapons will run out, and Russia will not fall. Russia may lose some territory, but it's not going to lose all territory. And certainly Russia, if it wants to, it can throw what it has in store at Ukraine and at the front line. Will it? Unclear, because Russia has been fighting a particular kind of war, because in the beginning, it was just not able to, it did not want to sustain the kind of losses that were necessary to get this done quick. But Russia was very successful in the beginning of this conflict. Don't forget that even as they were losing on the battlefield, they were very close to peaceful negotiations. And it just so happens that Collective West undermined them. And then you had the offensives that occurred afterward. And you know the rest, everyone. You know the rest. The rest is that the United States and NATO continued the conflict. Ukraine made some gains in these offensives in Kherson and Kharkov. They were temporary. Now the front line is in this incredible battle of attrition in places like Bakhmut. Ukrainians are dying. You know, we've had military personnel of Ukraine dying in the hundreds of thousands, suffering. Ukraine is just an absolutely decimated, failed state at this point. And it's gotten so bad. This is why, this is why this, this is why this is doomed. Because this is doomed because we're actually seeing a new world order emerge to the point where the Collective West just doesn't want to smell the coffee. It doesn't want to smell the roses, because that means acknowledging that they've lost. Well, guess what? Ukraine has kind of acknowledged that they're limited. They're very limited in what they can do. And here's a big instance of that. And I wanted to share this because I thought it was so incredibly important to understand where things really are. Now, yeah, you can talk about a spring offensive all you want, but guess what? Ukraine is not as strong as you may think. Ukraine politically is very tenuous. We've covered it on this show. Politically, there's been kind of a musical chairs going on in the Zelensky regime. There's also been a lot of defections in the Ukrainian military. There's been massive losses in the Ukrainian military. And now you have massive weapons shortages that may be ameliorated very temporarily, but in the long term, they cannot recover from it. And then you have this factor of China. Ukraine has said that it's not going to criticize China or condemn China. Why? Because it's anxious not to anger Russia's close partner in the hope of attracting future investment, says Politico. And that it's refrained from criticizing China over its close ties with Russia in the hope of attracting future investment from Beijing, says Politico. This stance comes in stark contrast to angry tirades that Kiev has directed at the likes of Hungary and Germany for their perceived lack of anti-Russian zeal. In an article on Tuesday, Politico reported that besides the desire for Chinese investment, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is seeking to maintain lucrative trade relations with the Asian economic powerhouse and is also eyeing a potential Beijing as a potential mediator in the conflict with Russia. The media outlet quoted Alexander Marakevsko, head of the Ukrainian Parliament's Foreign Policy Committee, as explaining There is fear that if we start criticizing China more harshly, Beijing will use it as an excuse to strengthen its aid to Russia and even start providing military aid. Beijing has consistently rejected claims that it intends to offer lethal aid to Moscow and has accused Washington of spreading false information by alleging China is weighing up weapons. So that's the deal, right? You have here that, according to Politico, Zelensky reacted to Beijing's plan that he can work on it with China. And his response was in marked contrast to how Ukraine's Western backers dismissed the proposal out of hand, according to the outlet. So Zelensky's current strategy toward Beijing is prudent, though he holds out little hope of real help from China. Well, that's because of how Ukraine has behaved. Ukraine hasn't behaved in a way that's kind of becoming of a serious actor, right? Ukraine has behaved as a puppet, and that's incredibly problematic for China. China can't be made to look stupid on the world stage because China has been very forthcoming about how correct its position is on multipolarity, peaceful development, and the like. So you have this Euro-Atlantic integration that China's consistent refusal to distance itself from Russia, as well as the fact that Ukraine has clearly chosen the path of Euro-Atlantic integration, pits Kiev against Beijing. I mean, that's really the reality. All right. The reality is that Ukraine has taken the opposite side, despite being very dependent on China economically. It needs China. It needs the Belt and Road Initiative. It needs all of these things. Yet you have a situation where the collective West and NATO has put Ukraine in the worst of situations, turned its government into a puppet state, a fascist state, really, turned that government around, overthrew it in a coup, and put Ukraine in the worst possible circumstance, where now, no matter how bad politically it's gotten in Ukraine, no matter how much it wants to throw itself at the collective West and say, do with me what you will, throw me at Russia, and watch everyone die and watch our country burn, it's still afraid of China. And it's not afraid of China. It's afraid of losing what China can provide. That's the strength of the multipolar world right now. That's the weakness of the so-called spring offensive. It looks like a paper tiger in comparison to these global shifts that are happening. And so that's why I want to share that at the end here, because I think what's so important about this history making moment and about this overall situation with this spring offensive, what's so important about it is not what's going to happen moment by moment. It's what is developing before our eyes in the medium and long term that is absolutely pointing toward the end of US hegemony as we know it and the emergence, if not the outright leadership of a multipolar world that does things like actually follow the UN Charter, oppose sanctions, create just and fair and balanced economic development that can meet the needs of the poorest, most downtrodden, most oppressed people in the world. And that's what's so significant here, is that that's the development. Even Ukraine, this puppet government masquerading as a sovereign country, this outright fascist government masquerading as a democratic country, that even this country, no matter that it was the product of a coup, a US backed coup, is still afraid. Zelensky's afraid of what might happen if it goes too far and angers China too much. To me, the road has already been set, though. The path has already been laid. The all of this has already been cemented. Xi Jinping is not going to talk to Zelensky in person. It's likely not even going to happen virtually. Media reports are saying that there's no timetable for Xi Jinping to talk to Zelensky. It may happen in a video call, maybe it'll happen in a telephone call, but don't expect there to be any kind of a welcome of Xi Jinping to Kiev or Vladimir Zelensky to Beijing. Not going to happen because the circumstances, the conditions, the real politique here is already evident. And that is that Ukraine has chosen a side Honestly, it hasn't chosen anything. It has been forced to a side. It has been forced under the umbrella, the thumb, the shackles of the United States and the collective West, and it is dying because of it. It is being destroyed because of it, just like every other country that has had to face and is currently facing the same circumstances. But the world is changing, everyone, and this spring offensive is not going to change what is occurring right now, which is the ascendancy of a new world order. Not the no new world order so bad. No, this is a new world order dictated by countries, by peoples who are interested in peace, who are interested in development, who are interested in the future of the human race, who are interested in ending this nightmare called US domination that has afflicted the planet for far too long, as well as its collective West puppets. Far too long. It's been far too long, and that era is coming to a close, and it couldn't have come any sooner.